Today's case is a reminder that even when we feel like we're in the safest place possible, that's not always true. But before we get started, welcome to True Crime with Maneater. If you love all things true crime, including missing person cases, cold cases, and just the strange happenings in the world, you've come to the right place. If you'd like to support the channel, be sure to subscribe and turn on alerts so you never miss a video upload. Let's get started. It was the early morning of April 15th, 1995. Houston resident Jennifer Morey had just returned home from a night out with friends. The 25-year-old lawyer lived alone in her apartment complex. But it wasn't just a standard 1995 apartment. In fact, it had a whole host of security features. Not only did they have a security guard on duty 24 hours a day, there's an 8-foot-tall fence around the entire property. They were very serious about keeping anyone who didn't live there out. This seemed like the perfect place for a 25-year-old lawyer who was living on her own. After arriving to her apartment, Jennifer Morey began to get ready for bed. She was exhausted, she had just been out with her friends, she climbed into bed, and she fell fast asleep right away. But that peaceful sleep wouldn't last long. Jennifer Morey would go on to say, "I believe I was in a very, very sound sleep, and when I felt suddenly, as I'm coming awake, someone on top of me. Someone with their body weight pressing down and holding my body down and grabbing at my underwear and trying to yank them off. And I was very befuddled. I didn't know what was happening. As she's coming to and she feels this heavy person on top of her, Jennifer would suddenly realize that she's in a fight for her life. Once Jennifer realizes that she's in trouble, she begins to fight. She's kicking and she's trying to scream and she's trying to fight this person off of her." She would go on to say, "And I reached my hands up and I feel this knife that's being held against my throat. And it was the clearest thought that went through my brain and woke me up. Oh, I'm being raped." She would say that as she was screaming and fighting back against this man, he became enraged and he would stab her on the right side of her face. She would say, "I took a very hard blow to my right eye. There's just this explosion of blood, like a hot waterfall just pouring out. I just felt like I have to get him off of me. I have to stop this. I cannot be raped and I cannot be killed." As she continued to fight back and scream, the assailant went through her throat and slit it. Jennifer would recall that she couldn't think of what the next step would be, not until her throat was slit. She would say, "When my throat was cut, then I knew. That was the first time that I thought I'm gonna die. I didn't want to die. I just wanted to get out of there, and I would have done anything to live at that moment." As she's profusely bleeding now from her neck and her face, her attacker drags her across her bedroom and into the bathroom. He would leave her there for a moment while he went back to fetch his knife. Unfortunately, her bathroom door didn't have a lock on it. And at that moment, Jennifer knew that she wasn't strong enough to keep the door closed while standing. So Jennifer would sink to the floor, press her back against the bathroom door, and put her feet against the tub. That way, she could keep the door pried shut. I think this really shows you how resourceful and how much fight Jennifer had. She's profusely bleeding from her neck at this point, down the side of her face. And what she does is when she's in that bathroom, she props herself against that door, props her legs up, and she holds on for dear life. She didn't know if he was coming back, but she knew that she had to fight. As she's sitting there and she has her back against the door, she's listening and she can hear him walking around her apartment. And she's petrified that at any moment he's gonna come and force his way into that bathroom. She would grab some toilet paper, press it against her neck, and just sit there and listen. I can't imagine the agony of this moment. She's profusely bleeding. She can hear him walking around the apartment, and she's just waiting for that moment when he forces his way into that bathroom. As she's holding the toilet paper against her neck and trying to stay conscious, she hears the zipper of his jeans go up. And as she's waiting, she can no longer hear anything. Doesn't seem that anybody is walking around her apartment or making any more noise. And she had two choices at that point: sit there and bleed to death, or go out and get help. I think this is a horrifying moment because she doesn't know for sure if he's in or out of this apartment, but she knows that if she doesn't get help immediately, she could die at any point. She gets up and she tries to open the bathroom door, but her hands are covered in blood, so she can't get the knob turned. And then she realizes that she had jammed the door shut. She had pressed so hard with her back against the door and her legs propped up that the door was now jammed. She would finally get the door open and crawl out of the bathroom. She would go to turn the lights on, but they didn't work. She went to her landline phone, and that also didn't work. It appears this man had not only cut the power, but her phone lines. Although it was 1995, Jennifer did have a cell phone, presumably because she was a lawyer and obviously she needed to be reached wherever she was. She would grab her cell phone and dial 911. When she finally reaches the 911 dispatcher, she tells them that somebody broke into her apartment and cut her throat. She would say, "Please help me. This guy just tried to cut my throat." She would say, "There's blood everywhere. I'm covered in blood. He knew my name. I don't know who it was. I know I locked the door. I don't know how he got into my apartment." The dispatcher would say, "Okay, ma'am, try and calm down a little bit." She would say, "Why would anybody do something like this?" He would respond, "I don't know. We have some crazy people in this world, but I want you to stay on the line." She would ask him his name. He would say, "My name is Richard." She would say, "I'm sorry, I'm trying to calm down." He would say, "There you go, you're doing fine. Right now you're doing fine." During this 10-minute call, suddenly somebody would knock on her door, and she believes it's the police department. But the 911 dispatcher, Richard Everett, would tell her that the police are not there yet, and he said, "Don't answer the door right now." Jennifer would call through the door and say, "Hello?" She would tell the dispatcher, "They said it's security." Dispatcher would say, "It's security?" She would call through her apartment door and say, "What's your name?" The dispatcher would say, "Do you see out the peephole?" Jennifer would tell the dispatcher that the man at the door is offering to help her. The dispatcher would say, "Jennifer, if you don't know who this is on the other side, do not open the door." Soon, Jennifer would come to learn that that dispatcher had saved her life. Outside of the door was the person that attacked her, and he had come back to finish the job. A few minutes later, the police department arrived, and the dispatcher said, "The police department's there, you can open the door." And she does. She was taken to the hospital where she survived. Luckily, the man had missed her jugular by millimeters. Had he cut that, she would have died. The stab wound on the right side of her face grazed the corner of her eye, but missed it. As the police are doing their job, they soon come to realize who attacked her. As Jennifer is in the hospital getting the help she desperately needed, police are on scene at her apartment looking for the intruder. When police officers entered her apartment, they found her underwear, a belt, a glove, and strangely enough, a Pinkerton security guard hat, and the knife used to attack her. Police would quickly realize that the apartment had on-duty security 24 hours, so they went to find the security officer and began to question him. The apartment's on-duty security guard that night was a 26-year-old man named Brian Wayne Gibson, and they would soon connect him to the attempted murder of Jennifer. In the apartment, they could see Jennifer's blood, and it was just splattered all over the walls and the ceiling. And while she was in the hospital, she was visited by many of the first responders who came to her rescue, and they told her that she put up one hell of a fight. Brian Wayne Gibson was arrested, and they would soon learn that he was employed by Pinkerton Security for the past 3 years. The thing is, he was constantly reassigned to different jobs after receiving complaints from clients, but the company didn't fire him. Instead, they eventually assigned him to work nights at the apartment complex where Jennifer lived. The thing is, Pinkerton guards had a history, and it wasn't a good one. Between 1991 and 1995, 130 Pinkerton guards were convicted of felonies in Texas alone, and apparently they have a long and bloody history in the US dating back to 1850. The agency still exists today and recently made headlines in 2020 after a security guard shot and killed a man. Eventually, Brian Wayne Gibson was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Jennifer would go back to her apartment just to get her belongings and move out. Although she was a qualified and good lawyer, the trauma of this event continued to resurface. So she hopped from job to job, taking positions at temporary agencies that she was overqualified for. But eventually, she would begin to rebuild her life. She would file a lawsuit against Pinkerton Security, and in 1998, she was awarded an undisclosed amount of money from the agency. That same year, she'd open her own family practice in Fort Worth and would meet the man that became her husband. And although the attack was many, many years ago, Jennifer and Richard Everett, the 911 dispatcher, are still good friends. Jennifer would say, "Having instinct, intuition, and a big heart, Richard saved my life. And for that, he will always be one of the most important people that's ever impacted my life. And I was lucky enough that when I got married, he came to my wedding." This case was important for me to share for many reasons, but specifically to talk about apartment safety. Recently, I feel like there's just been nonstop headlines about people, specifically people that work at apartment complexes, whether that's security guards or maintenance men or whomever, breaking into their residents' apartments. Jennifer does remember locking the door that night, and I absolutely believe that she did. The thing is, security probably had a key, and he just let himself in. Because it's 2023, there's quite a few things you can do now for apartment safety. I think one of the best things to do is to purchase one of those door jammers and place it under the door every single night or when you're home alone. If you have a sliding glass door, when the door is closed, it's important to have something placed in there so that the door can't be pried open. Let's face it, the locks on those sliding glass doors, not very strong. Chain locks aren't really that great because they're easy to open. They do have locks called bumpers or door guards. Those are better than chain locks because you can't pry them open. They have door reinforcers, they have bolts. It's really important that when you're living in an apartment complex, you do have added security. And because it's 2023, a lot of apartments are coming up with the digital age. So digital locks are now a thing, and typically you just need a car, you tap it on the door, it opens. So the best way to prevent somebody coming in, somebody that may have access to that card, would probably be one of those door stoppers. I do plan on putting some Amazon links in the description below so that if you're living in an apartment or even have your own house, you can still purchase them. But that's it for today, guys. If you like this video or any other video on my channel and want to support, be sure to subscribe and turn on alerts so you never miss a video upload. If there's a case you'd like me to cover, pop it in the comments below and I'll be sure to get to it. In the meantime, check out some other videos on my channel while you wait for the next upload, and I'll see you then.